Dawn August 480 BC. A narrow strip of land between the mountains and the sea in central Greece. 300 men in bronze armor are combing their long hair and sharpening their spears, as if this were an ordinary morning. It is not. Marching toward them, filling the horizon with dust, is the largest army the ancient world has ever seen. The Greeks who stand in its path have been told the enemy's arrows will be so many they will blot out the sun. One Spartan simply shrugs. "Good," he says, "then we will fight in the shade." This is the story of Thermopylae, and almost everything about it is more incredible than the legend. To understand how 300 Spartans ended up standing against an empire, we have to go back 10 years. The Persian Empire was, by an enormous margin, the superpower of the age. It stretched from India to Egypt, from the steppes of Central Asia to the edge of Europe. 44% of the entire human race, by some estimates, lived under the rule of its great king. And in the year 490 BC, that king, Darius, sent an army to punish a small, stubborn people on the far western edge of the map, the Greeks. At a beach called Marathon, against every expectation, the Athenians crushed that Persian army and threw it back into the sea. Persia never forgot the humiliation. Darius died planning his revenge, and the task of vengeance passed to his son, a young king with everything to prove. His name was Xerxes. Xerxes did not want another raid. He wanted an invasion that would end Greece forever. For 4 full years, the empire prepared. Herodotus, the Greek historian, claims the army Xerxes assembled numbered in the millions. Modern historians put it somewhere between 100 and 300,000 men, plus a fleet of over 1,000 ships. Even the lowest estimate makes it one of the largest invasion forces of the entire ancient world. To move this monster into Europe, Xerxes performed feats of engineering that sounded like myths. His engineers lashed together 674 ships to build 2 floating bridges across the Hellespont, the sea channel between Asia and Europe. When a storm destroyed the first bridge, Xerxes ordered his men to whip the sea itself 300 times as punishment. Then he built the bridge again, and his army marched from one continent to another over the water. Ancient writers claim that when this army stopped to drink, entire rivers ran dry. News of the coming storm rolled across Greece, and Greece panicked. The Greeks were not a nation. They were hundreds of quarrelsome, independent city-states that had spent most of their history at war with each other. Dozens of cities simply surrendered in advance, sending the tokens of submission the Persians demanded, earth and water. But 2 cities refused to bow. Athens, which poured its silver into building the finest war fleet in the Aegean, and Sparta. Sparta was unlike any other place in the ancient world. It was a society engineered for a single purpose: war. Spartan boys were taken from their mothers at the age of 7 and thrown into the agoge, a brutal state training system that starved them, beat them, and forged them into the most feared heavy infantry on earth. Spartan mothers had a famous farewell for their sons: "Come back with your shield or on it." When Sparta asked the sacred oracle at Delphi what to do, the answer was chilling. Either Sparta will be burned to the ground, the priestess declared, or Sparta will mourn a dead king. King Leonidas, a man in his 50s who had been through the agoge like any common soldier, seems to have understood exactly what that meant. There was a problem. It was the festival of Carnaia, and Spartan religious law forbade the army from marching to war. So Leonidas found a loophole. He would not take the army. He would take a royal bodyguard, 300 men, every one of them a battle-hardened veteran, and everyone chosen for a grim, specific reason. Each man had a living son at home, so that no family line would be extinguished by what was coming. These men were not chosen to win. As they marched north, other Greek cities added their soldiers, until the force numbered around 7,000. History remembers the 300. It should also remember the 7,000 who stood with them. The place Leonidas chose to make his stand was a masterpiece of tactical thinking. Thermopylae, the hot gates named for its sulfur springs, was a narrow pass squeezed between the cliffs of Mount Kalidromos and the waters of the Malian Gulf. In places, the road was barely wide enough for a single ox cart. An old defensive wall, built by the local Phocians generations earlier, already stood across the pass, and the Greeks quickly repaired it. The genius of the position was simple mathematics. In an open field, 300,000 men could swallow 7,000 in an afternoon. But in a corridor a few meters wide, numbers stop mattering. Only a few hundred men can fight at the front at any one time. At Thermopylae, every battle would be a fair fight. And at a fair fight, nobody on earth could beat the Greeks. At the same time, just offshore, the Athenian-led fleet took position at Artemisium to stop the Persian navy from simply sailing around the pass and landing behind them. The plan was one interlocking machine of land and sea. The Persian army arrived and stopped. Xerxes sent a mounted scout to observe the tiny Greek force blocking his road. What the scout reported back baffled the king of kings. The Spartans had stripped their weapons and were exercising naked in the sun. Others were calmly combing their long hair. Xerxes turned to Leonidas, an exiled Spartan king traveling with the Persian court, and asked what this madness meant. Leonidas's answer was not comforting. "It is their custom," he said. "They are grooming themselves for battle. These men have come to fight you for this pass, and they will fight you to the death. It is the law of their land." Xerxes laughed. He had thousands of men for every one Greek in the pass. He waited 4 days, certain that the sight of his endless army would break their nerve, and they would simply run away. They did not run. Before the killing began, Xerxes tried words. His envoys rode to the Greek line and offered generous terms. The Greeks could keep their lands, keep their freedom, gain new territory if they simply laid down their arms. Leonidas's answer became one of the most famous phrases in military history. "Mullen Labe, come and take them." There would be no negotiation. Sparta had already made its position on Persian demands brutally clear years earlier. When Persian ambassadors came asking for earth and water, the Spartans had thrown them down a well and told them to dig the earth and water out themselves. The diplomatic phase was over. On the 5th day, out of patience, Xerxes ordered his army forward, commanding his men to bring him these insolent Greeks in chains. The first wave were the Medes, thousands of them, brave men in tunics and trousers, carrying short spears and shields of woven wicker. They charged into the narrow corridor of the hot gates, and they met something they had never encountered before. The Greek phalanx, a solid interlocking wall of heavy bronze shields, bristling with iron-tipped spears 8 feet long. Every Greek hoplite was sheathed in bronze helmet, breastplate, greaves, while most Persian troops wore little armor at all. Wicker met bronze and wicker lost. The Persian short spears could not even reach the Greek line before the long Greek spears found them. Wave after wave crashed into the phalanx and broke apart like water on stone. The dead began to pile up in the narrow corridor, and the living had to climb over them just to reach the fight. The Spartans, drilled since childhood in maneuvers no other army could perform, added something crueler. Again and again, they would feign a panicked retreat, turning and running in apparent disorder. The Persians, sensing victory, would surge forward, lose their formation, and then, on a single barked command, the Spartans would wheel around as one man and slam into their scattered pursuers. It was a killing machine disguised as a rout. Herodotus records that Xerxes, watching from a golden throne set on the hillside, leapt to his feet 3 times in horror at what was happening to his army. On that first day, the greatest empire on earth threw thousands of men at a wall of bronze, and the wall did not move. Toward evening, Xerxes stopped experimenting and sent in his best, the Immortals. 10,000 elite royal guards, the most feared soldiers in Asia, so named because their number was always kept at exactly 10,000. Any man who fell was instantly replaced. They marched into the pass in perfect order, and the result was exactly the same. Their shorter spears could not reach the Greeks. Their wicker shields could not stop the Greek iron. The corridor stripped away their numbers, and man for man, they simply were not equal to heavy Greek infantry. The Immortals, the pride of the empire, were beaten back like everyone else. That night, the campfires of the Greek camp burned behind the old wall, and 7,000 men who had just fought a superpower to a standstill dared to believe the impossible. They were winning. The second day repeated the first, as if the gods were replaying the same nightmare for Xerxes on a loop. Fresh Persian contingents were fed into the meat grinder of the pass, and the Greeks rotating their city contingents in shifts so that every unit fought fresh, cut them down in their turn. The Persian dead now numbered in the many thousands. In the Persian camp, something like despair began to spread. The King of Kings, master of 44% of humanity, was being humiliated in front of his entire empire by a force smaller than a single division of his army, and there was no way through, no way around, and no end in sight. Xerxes, Herodotus tells us, was at a complete loss what to do next. And then, that evening, a local Greek asked to see the king. His name was Ephialtes, and he wanted money. Ephialtes, a man from the region, knew something the Persians did not. The mountain wall protecting the Greek flank was not solid. There was a path, the Anapaea Trail, a narrow goat track that climbed through the oak forests, over the ridge of Kalidromos, and came down behind the Greek position. In exchange for a rich reward, Ephialtes offered to guide the Persian army along it. Xerxes did not hesitate. That very night, under a moonless sky, he sent Hydarnes and the Immortals up the secret path. All night they climbed in silence through the black oak forest, thousands of the empire's best soldiers, moving single file along the track, with the whole fate of the invasion resting on one traitor's greed. The name Ephialtes would become, and remains to this day, the Greek word for nightmare. Leonidas had known about the path. He was too good a soldier not to ask about his own flanks, and he had posted 1,000 local Phocian troops on the heights to guard it. But the Phocians were guarding against a daytime attack they expected to see coming. At dawn, the Immortals came out of the trees, silent and sudden, and the shocked Phocians scrambled to a hilltop to make their stand, expecting the attack to come at them. Instead, Hydarnes simply ignored them, wheeled his column past, and kept marching. The path was open. Greek runners and lookouts came sprinting down the mountain to Leonidas with the news he had been dreading. The Immortals were behind them. The trap that had held for 2 days was now closing on the men inside it. Leonidas called a council of war at dawn, and the choice on the table was stark. Retreat now, while the southern road was still open, and live to fight another day. Or stay and be surrounded by midday. Leonidas made the decision that turned a battle into a legend. The bulk of the army, thousands of allied Greeks, would march south immediately, saved to defend Greece in the battles to come. But someone had to hold the pass while they escaped, or the Persian cavalry would ride them down on the open road. The 300 Spartans would stay. The prophecy had said a king must die for Sparta to live, and Leonidas intended to fulfill it, and they did not stay alone. 700 hoplites from the small city of Thespiae refused to leave, choosing annihilation beside the Spartans, though history has almost forgotten their name. 400 Thebans stayed as well, 1,100 men, give or take, against the world. That morning, Leonidas is said to have given his men the darkest breakfast order in military history. Eat well, lads, for tonight we dine in Hades. When the Persians came, the Greeks did something unexpected. They did not hide behind their wall. They marched out in front of it, into the widest part of the pass, to kill as many of the enemy as possible in the time they had left. What followed, even filtered through Herodotus' Greek pride, sounds less like a battle than a frenzy. The Greeks fought knowing they were already dead, and men who know they are dead are the most dangerous men alive. Their spears shattered, so they drew their short swords. The swords broke, and Herodotus says they fought on with their hands and with their teeth. Behind the Persian lines, officers with whips lashed their own men forward into the Greek blades, and the press was so terrible that thousands of Persians were trampled by their own comrades or shoved into the sea to drown. It was here, in the crush and roar of that final morning, that Leonidas fell. Around his body, the fighting reached an intensity that shocked even Herodotus. 4 times the Persians surged forward to claim the corpse of the king, and 4 times the Spartans hurled them back, dragging their fallen commander from the enemy's hands. The bodyguard of the great king paid a heavy price in blood for that stretch of ground, and among the Persian dead lay 2 brothers of Xerxes himself, princes of the royal house, killed in the scrum for a dead man's body. Bleeding, exhausted, and now attacked from behind as the Immortals arrived down the mountain path, the surviving Greeks pulled back for the last time, carrying their king through the gate in the old wall onto a small rounded hill called Kolonos. On that hill, the last of the 300 and the last of the Thespians formed their final circle. Their weapons were mostly gone. Herodotus says they defended themselves with whatever remained, swords, hands, and teeth, around the body of their king. Xerxes had lost all appetite for sending men into that circle. Instead, his troops sealed the hill, drew back, and unleashed the arrow storm. The sky, as promised on the first morning, went dark. When the arrows finally stopped, there was silence at the hot gates. Every man on the hill was dead. In his fury at what this tiny force had cost him, perhaps 20,000 of his soldiers, by ancient estimates, Xerxes ordered the body of Leonidas mutilated, an act considered deeply shameful even by Persian custom, and a measure of just how badly 300 men had rattled the master of the world. The pass was open. It had taken the greatest empire on earth 7 days to walk down a road. But Thermopylae, the defeat, turned out to be the beginning of Persia's undoing. The rearguard's sacrifice bought the Greek army its escape, and bought Greece something even more valuable: a story. The proof that the invincible empire bled. Athens was evacuated, and Xerxes burned the empty city. But weeks later, in the narrow strait of Salamis, the Greek fleet, following the same brutal logic of Thermopylae, fight them in a corridor, lured the massive Persian navy into tight waters, and shattered it. Xerxes, terrified his bridge home might be cut, retreated to Asia with most of his army. The force he left behind was annihilated the following year by a united Greek army at Plataea, where the Spartans, burning for revenge, broke the Persian line. The invasion was over. Greece, outnumbered, divided, and written off, had defeated the superpower of the age. Years later, a stone was raised at Thermopylae where the last men fell. Its inscription, written by the poet Simonides, is just 10 words in Greek, and it may be the most famous epitaph in human history. Go tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here, obedient to their laws, we lie. 25 centuries have passed, and we are still telling them. Not because 300 men could stop 300,000, they could not, and they knew it, but because they stood anyway. Thermopylae became the permanent, defining proof that courage is not about the odds. Free men fighting for their home chose death over submission, and in losing, they won something no empire ever conquered. The world still knows their names, and the empire that killed them is